Parents didn't want to see me with my children at Thanksgiving. Your sister's children shouldn't see losers like you. My dad shouted loudly. I said I stopped helping with money and Thanksgiving was supposed to be a time for family. A time to be grateful, to share a meal, to enjoy the company of the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally. But for me, Thanksgiving had always been a test of endurance. A ritual of swallowing my pride, biting my tongue, and pretending I didn't see the blatant favoritism my parents showered upon my sister, Lisa. Every year, I told myself it didn't matter. That I was just imagining it. That maybe this time would be different. And every year, I left the dinner table with the same bitter taste in my mouth. But this year was worse. Much worse. When I arrived with my 2 kids, Tyler and Emma, the tension hit me before I even stepped through the door. The moment my father laid eyes on me, his expression darkened. He didn't greet me. He didn't acknowledge my children. Instead, he looked at Lisa's perfectly dressed, perfectly mannered children and then back at mine with a sneer. Then, loud enough for the entire room to hear, he said, "Your sister's children shouldn't see losers like you." Silence. The kind that suffocates. I stood there, gripping my son's shoulder, feeling Emma's tiny fingers tighten around mine. My mother busied herself with the mashed potatoes, pretending she hadn't heard. Lisa shifted uncomfortably in her seat but said nothing. The rest of the family stared at their plates, as if suddenly fascinated by their food. I had spent my entire life proving to these people that I wasn't a failure. That I was more than just the forgotten son, the one who wasn't spoiled, the one who had to build everything from the ground up. And yet, no matter how much I achieved, how much I gave, to them, I was still nothing. But today, I wasn't alone. Today, my children heard it too. And I wasn't going to let them grow up believing they had a father who let himself be humiliated. So I took a deep breath, let the rage settle into something cold and sharp, and I said clear and steady, for everyone to hear. "If that's how you feel, then you won't see another dime from me." The room, already quiet, became deathly still. My father blinked. My mother's hands froze over the serving dish. Lisa finally looked up. And in that moment I saw it, the realization. The weight of what I had just said sinking in. Because for years, I had been their safety net. The one who covered their bills when they came up short. The one who bailed Lisa out of her terrible financial decisions. The one who made sure they never had to suffer the consequences of their own irresponsibility. I turned to my kids. "Come on," I said. "We're leaving." And as I walked out of that house, for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. The drive home was quiet. Too quiet. Tyler stared out the window, his brow furrowed the way it always did when he was deep in thought. Emma, only 6, held onto her stuffed rabbit, looking up at me in the rearview mirror every so often, her small face scrunched in confusion. She didn't understand what had happened, not fully. But she understood enough to know that something wasn't right. "Dad?" Tyler finally spoke. His voice was careful, uncertain. "Why does Grandpa talk to you like that?" I exhaled, gripping the steering wheel tighter. What was I supposed to say? That my own father had never respected me? That no matter what I did, I would never be enough for him? "He just doesn't see things the way he should," I said carefully. "But that doesn't matter. What matters is that we don't have to listen to him anymore." Tyler nodded slowly, but I could tell the answer didn't satisfy him. He was old enough to know that family was supposed to be different. That fathers weren't supposed to treat their sons like dirt. Emma's voice was softer. "Are we still gonna go to Grandma's for Christmas?" I didn't answer right away. The truth was, I hadn't thought that far ahead yet. Thanksgiving had been bad, but Christmas? That was the big one. The holiday where I usually spent the most, made sure the house was full of gifts, not just for my kids, but for my parents and Lisa's family too. It was always me who put the most under their tree. And they had the nerve to call me a loser. Not this year. "No, sweetheart," I said finally. "I think we'll do Christmas at home this time." Emma pouted, but Tyler seemed to understand. "Good," he muttered under his breath. By the time we got home, my phone was already buzzing. I glanced at the screen. "Mom." I let it ring. A few minutes later, another call. "Lisa." Then Dad. I set the phone down on the kitchen counter, ignoring them all. Whatever they had to say, I wasn't interested. But the text started next. Mom, honey, please don't take what your father said too seriously. You know how he gets. We can talk about this, just call me back. Lisa, why would you say something like that in front of everyone? You embarrass Dad. Dad, grow up. This is why you'll never be as successful as Lisa. You act like a child. You think you can just cut us off? Don't be stupid. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. Successful? Lisa, the same woman who had declared bankruptcy twice because she couldn't manage money? The same woman whose lifestyle I had been propping up for years. And yet, she was the one they praised. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. They really thought I was bluffing. They had no idea. I turned off my phone, set it face down, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt something other than resentment. I felt relief. The first day of silence was bliss. No calls, no guilt-tripping messages, no demands. Just peace. I made breakfast for the kids, took them to the park, and for once, I didn't have to worry about anyone asking me for money. But by the second day, the cracks started to show, on their end, not mine. By lunchtime, my phone was blowing up again. More missed calls from Mom. More texts from Lisa. And finally a message from Dad that was so ridiculous, I had to sit down to read it. Dad, if you think you can just stop helping your family, you're selfish. We raised you. We gave you everything. And you can't even be bothered to take care of us in return? You've really let us down, son. I scoffed, shaking my head. They gave me everything? These were the same parents who had never helped me when I was struggling. The same ones who watched me work 2 jobs to keep food on the table for my kids while Lisa, who had never worked a full day in her life, was gifted every opportunity. They expected me to keep sacrificing, to keep giving, because in their minds that was my role. But not anymore. Ignoring the message, I went about my day. But by the time evening rolled around, my phone rang again, this time from an unfamiliar number. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to pick up. Hello? Seriously? You won't even answer your family anymore? Lisa's voice was sharp, annoyed. I sighed. What do you want, Lisa? Mom is freaking out, she said, as if that was supposed to make me care. Dad's mad, and now they're talking about selling the house just to cover bills. You know they can't afford that. You're really gonna let that happen? I leaned back in my chair, letting her words sit between us. And why exactly is that my problem? You know why, she snapped. You've always helped them. Just because Dad said something stupid, you're going to punish everyone. A slow, humorless chuckle escaped me. Everyone? I repeated. You mean you and Mom? Because I know you're not worried about Dad. He's been retired for years, living off money that's not even his. Lisa's silence was all the confirmation I needed. Look, I get that you're upset, she finally said, softening her voice, trying a new tactic. But you can't just cut them off like this. They need you. No, Lisa, I said, my tone even. They need my money. And if I'm such a loser like Dad said, then they shouldn't have been depending on me in the first place. Another silence. Then, frustrated, she muttered, You're being dramatic. I smiled. No, I'm just finally treating them the way they've always treated me. Then I hung up. That night, I slept better than I had in years. The next few days were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts. At first, I thought maybe they had finally accepted it, that they had realized I wasn't their personal ATM anymore. Maybe, just maybe, they had started to take responsibility for their own lives. I should have known better. It wasn't until Friday night that the next move came. I was helping Emma with her bedtime story when there was a knock at the door. Not a light, polite knock. A pounding. Tyler, sitting on the couch, glanced up from his tablet. Dad? I already knew who it was. Stay here, I said, setting the book down and heading to the door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, bundled up against the cold, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Behind her, Lisa stood with an exasperated expression, hands on her hips. Mom, I said, keeping my voice even. What are you doing here? She let out a dramatic sigh, as if I was the one causing her problems. We need to talk. I glanced at Lisa, who was already glaring at me like I was some rebellious teenager. I don't think we do, I said simply. You made it clear how you feel about me. Mom's face tightened. Don't be ridiculous. You're making this into something bigger than it is. I huffed a short, humorless laugh. Oh, am I? Because I'm pretty sure Dad said, and I quote, your sister's children shouldn't see losers like you, right before I was humiliated in front of the whole family. Lisa rolled her eyes. Oh my God, he didn't mean it like that. How did he mean it then? I shot back. Silence. Mom shifted, rubbing her arms. Look, your father, he's old-fashioned. You know how he is. He just speaks without thinking sometimes. I nodded slowly. Right. And you? What's your excuse? Her lips pressed together, but she had no answer. Lisa sighed dramatically. Okay, fine, Dad was wrong, happy? But you're making it worse by being stubborn. Just come back for Christmas. We can talk things over then. I leaned against the doorframe. So that's what this is really about. Christmas. Mom hesitated. Well, it's just, it won't feel the same if you're not there. I tilted my head, pretending to think. You mean it won't feel the same without all the gifts I usually bring? Or the money I spend making sure everyone has a perfect holiday? Lisa's expression soured. God, you're so dramatic. This isn't about money. I crossed my arms. Oh? So if I show up empty-handed, with no presents and no cash, that'll be fine? More silence. I nodded. That's what I thought. Mom let out a long breath. We just want our family together. She tried again, her voice softer. That's all. I stared at her for a long moment. Did she really believe that? Or was this just another manipulation? Either way, it didn't matter. I wasn't falling for it. You had a chance to treat me like family, Mom, I said quietly. You chose not to. So now I'm choosing not to. Lisa scoffed. Oh, come on. You're really going to cut us off forever just because Dad hurt your feelings? I looked her dead in the eye. No, Lisa. I'm cutting you off because for years you've used me. And I let it happen. But now, I'm done. Mom's face fell. Lisa opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't give her the chance. I stepped back and shut the door. For the first time in my life, I set a boundary. And it felt good. The next morning, my phone buzzed before I even had my first cup of coffee. Mom, I don't understand why you're doing this. We're family. We love you. We just want things to go back to normal. There it was, the guilt trip. I stared at the message for a long moment before setting my phone down. I wasn't falling for it. Normal? Normal was me working overtime to cover their bills. Normal was Lisa making reckless choices and expecting me to clean up the mess. Normal was Dad treating me like garbage while happily taking my money. No. I wasn't going back to normal. A few minutes later, another text came in. Lisa, you're being ridiculous. If you don't come to Christmas, Mom's going to be heartbroken. You're seriously okay with that? I sighed, rubbing my temples. They weren't apologizing. They weren't acknowledging what they had done. They just wanted me back in line. I picked up my phone and typed out a response. Me, I think you're confusing heartbroken with inconvenienced. Then I turned my phone off. I was done explaining myself. For the next few days, I stuck to my decision. I ignored the texts, the calls, the guilt tripping. And for the first time in years, I felt in control of my own life. Then, on Wednesday evening, the doorbell rang again. I almost didn't answer it. I was tired of the drama, tired of them showing up uninvited. But something told me this time was different. When I opened the door, my father was standing there. Not Mom. Not Lisa. Just him. He looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen before, not anger, not disappointment. Something else. Can I come in? He asked, his voice quieter than usual. I didn't move. Why? He sighed, glancing past me into the house. I just want to talk. I studied him for a moment. My whole life, my father had been a presence of authority, someone who never questioned his own actions, never admitted when he was wrong. But now, standing on my porch in the cold, he didn't look so sure of himself. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. 5 minutes. He walked in, looking around like he hadn't been inside my home in years, which, to be fair, he hadn't. I led him to the kitchen, where he sat down at the table. I stayed standing. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, finally, he spoke. Your mother's worried sick. He started. I sighed. If she's so worried, she can apologize. His jaw tightened. She's not good with words, you know that. She was plenty good with words when she sat there and let you humiliate me in front of everyone. His face twitched. I shouldn't have said what I said. It wasn't an apology, but it was the closest thing I'd ever get from him. Still, I crossed my arms. And? He looked up at me, his hands clasped together. Look, I know you're angry. But you made your point. Cutting off your family isn't the answer. I huffed a short laugh. Oh, so now I've made my point? And what point is that, Dad? His eyes darkened. That you have control. That you hold all the cards. Fine. But enough is enough. There it was. The real reason he was here. It wasn't about me. It wasn't about understanding why I was done. It was about money. I shook my head. You still don't get it, do you? What? He snapped, the patience in his voice finally cracking. I'm not playing a game, I said. I'm not holding all the cards. I'm not trying to punish you. I'm just done. His jaw tightened. That's not how family works. I leaned forward, placing my hands on the table. Then explain it to me, Dad. Explain how family works. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like family only applies when it benefits you. Silence. He exhaled sharply, looking away. You've always been dramatic, he muttered. I straightened. And you've always taken me for granted. He looked at me then, really looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. You're serious about this? He said quietly. I nodded. I am. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his expression. Not anger. Not frustration. Something closer to regret. He stood up, adjusting his jacket. Fine, he said stiffly. If that's how you want it. I nodded once. It is. Without another word, he walked toward the door. I followed, holding it open. Just before stepping out, he hesitated. If you change your mind. I met his gaze. I won't. And with that, he left. I shut the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. I expected to feel guilty. But all I felt was relief. The next day, my phone was quiet. No calls. No texts. For the first time in years, my family wasn't reaching out, not to ask for money, not to guilt-trip me, not to drag me into their problems. It felt strange. Almost too quiet. Tyler noticed it first. So, they just gave up? He asked over breakfast. I shrugged. Maybe. Emma swung her legs under the table. Is that a good thing? I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, sweetheart. It is. Because for once, I wasn't dreading my phone ringing. For once, I wasn't worrying about fixing problems that weren't mine. For once, I was free. 2 days passed. No calls. No texts. At first, I thought they had finally accepted it, that they had realized I wasn't coming back, wasn't going to cave, wasn't going to keep playing the role they had assigned me. Then, on Saturday morning, I checked my mail. Inside was a single envelope with my parents' return address. No note, no explanation. Just a bill. An overdue notice for their electricity. I stared at it for a long time, my grip tightening. They really thought this would work? That slipping a bill into my mailbox would somehow guilt me into paying it? That I would just handle it like I always had? I walked back inside, set the bill down on the counter, and poured myself a cup of coffee. Then, without a second thought, I tossed the bill into the trash. Because this time, it wasn't my problem. And it never would be again. By Sunday afternoon, I knew the silence wouldn't last. The doorbell rang while I was helping Emma with her puzzles. Tyler, sitting on the couch, glanced at me. Think it's them? I sighed, already knowing the answer. Stay here. When I opened the door, Mom stood on the porch, arms wrapped around herself, her expression carefully composed. Not angry. Not defensive. Just tired. I waited. Can we talk? She asked. I crossed my arms. About what? She let out a slow breath. Your father and I, we're struggling. The bills. I know. I interrupted. I got the electric bill in the mail. Nice touch, by the way. She winced. That wasn't. I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't meant to manipulate me? She fell silent. I sighed. Mom, when are you going to understand? I'm done. I'm not fixing this for you. I'm not bailing you out. I'm not your safety net anymore. Her eyes glistened, but I wasn't falling for it. You don't mean that, she whispered. We're family, honey. I clenched my jaw. Funny how that only matters when you need something. Her face crumpled, but she didn't argue. For the first time, I saw it, the realization finally hitting her. The understanding that I wasn't playing a game, that this wasn't a tantrum. That I was serious. She nodded once, stepping back. I hope one day you'll forgive us. I studied her. I hope one day you'll understand why I won't. Then I closed the door. And this time, I knew they weren't in control anymore. I was. Days passed, then a full week. No calls. No texts. No surprise visits. For the first time in years, my life was mine. At first, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for Dad to explode, for Lisa to show up screaming, for Mom to send some long, guilt-ridden message begging me to reconsider. But nothing came. One evening, as I sat on the couch watching a movie with Tyler and Emma, I realized something. I wasn't thinking about them. I wasn't stressing over what bill they might send next, or how they'd try to manipulate me, or whether I was being a good enough son. I was just here. With my kids. Present. Emma giggled at something on the screen, leaning against my side. Tyler smiled, completely relaxed. And for the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt truly at peace. I had spent so much of my life chasing after their approval, hoping for some acknowledgement, some love that would never come. But I didn't need it anymore. I had my own family. And that was more than enough.